The rehabilitation centre brochure looked like something from a luxury resort catalogue. Ethan spread it across my kitchen table, his finger tapping the glossy photos of sun-drenched rooms and smiling elderly people doing Tai Chi by a pond. "Mum, it's only for a few months," he said, using that gentle voice he reserved for closing business deals. "Just until you're fully recovered from the fall." Sophia nodded beside him, her perfectly manicured hand covering mine. "We've been so worried about you rattling around in this big house all alone. What if you fall again and no one finds you for hours?" I looked around my kitchen at the copper pots hanging above the stove that Richard and I had collected from antique shops across New England, at the window seat where I'd watched 40 years of seasons change the maple tree in our yard. My hip still ached from the fall 3 weeks ago, and I had to admit the physical therapy appointments were exhausting. "Willow Creek has the best rehabilitation program in Massachusetts," Ethan continued. "Private rooms, gourmet meals, round-the-clock nursing care, and once you're back on your feet, we'll find you a beautiful condo. Something modern and easy to maintain, closer to us." "What about the house?" I asked. "We'll take care of everything," Sophia said quickly. "You just focus on getting better." They looked so concerned, so devoted. My children, who rarely visited, suddenly attentive and caring. I should have recognized the performance for what it was, but I was tired and lonely, and my hip hurt, and the idea of someone taking care of me for a while seemed like a gift. "Okay," I said. "If you really think it's best." The relief on their faces should have been my first warning. Willow Creek didn't look anything like the brochure. The building was institutional grey, not the warm terracotta I'd seen in the photos. The lobby smelled of disinfectant and overcooked vegetables instead of the lavender mentioned in the glossy pages. "This isn't what I expected," I said as Ethan wheeled me through the entrance. "All rehab centres look the same on the inside, Mom," Sophia said, not meeting my eyes. "It's the quality of care that matters." The intake nurse, a stern woman named Margaret, took my phone from my purse. "For safekeeping," she said. "We don't want you distracted from your recovery." "I'd like to keep it, please." "Centre policy," Margaret replied, dropping it into a drawer. "You can use the landline to call your family during visiting hours." I looked at Ethan, expecting him to object, to demand they return my property. Instead, he kissed my forehead. "We'll visit soon, Mom. Get some rest." They were gone before I could say goodbye. My room was small and sparse, nothing like the spacious quarters in the brochure. The window looked out onto a parking lot, not a pond. I pressed the call button, thinking there must have been some mistake, that surely I wasn't meant to be in this particular room. A young nurse appeared, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her name tag read, Jenny. She had kind eyes, but they held a wariness I couldn't quite interpret. "Can I help you, Mrs. Carter?" "I think there's been a mistake. My children said this was a rehabilitation facility, but this seems more like a nursing home," Jenny finished quietly. She glanced at the doorway, then lowered her voice. "What exactly did your children tell you about this place?" Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "They said it was temporary, that I'd be here for a few months of physical therapy." Jenny bit her lip. "Mrs. Carter, most people who come here don't leave. This is a long-term care facility. Did you sign any papers?" "Just admission forms. They said it was standard." She nodded slowly, and I saw pity flicker across her young face. "I'm sorry. I've seen this before." "Seen what before?" But she was already backing toward the door. "I should go. Press the button if you need anything." That first night, I lay awake staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. Ethan and Sophia loved me. They were busy with their own lives, but they wouldn't lie to me. They wouldn't trap me. By morning, I knew better. The routine at Willow Creek was suffocating. Breakfast at 7, physical therapy at 9, lunch at noon, afternoon activities at 2, dinner at 5, lights out at 9. I asked repeatedly to use a phone to call my children. Margaret informed me that I'd already exceeded my weekly call limit. But I haven't called anyone, I protested. According to our records, you called both your children on admission day. I never made those calls. She gave me a thin smile. Perhaps you forgot, Mrs. Carter. Memory issues are common at your age. I wasn't suffering from memory issues. I was being held prisoner. It took me a week to understand the full scope of their plan. Jenny had been avoiding me since that first night, but I caught her alone in the physical therapy room during her rounds. Please, I said, I need to know what's happening. Why can't I leave? She looked around nervously. You don't understand what you're asking me. I understand perfectly. My children put me here so they could do something. I need to know what. Jenny's shoulders sagged. She pulled out her phone and showed me a real estate listing. My house. My beautiful Victorian on Marlborough Street, with its original crown moulding and the garden Richard had planted, listed for $2.7 million. They put it on the market 3 days after you checked in, Jenny said softly. I recognized the address from your paperwork. I'm sorry. The room tilted. I gripped the parallel bars to steady myself. How do you know about this? I grew up in foster care. No family, no one to look out for me, so I pay attention to these things. I've watched it happen before, elderly parents tucked away while their kids liquidate their assets, usually by the time anyone realizes it's too late. Why are you telling me this? She met my eyes. Because you asked, and because unlike some of the people here, you're sharp enough to fight back. I don't know how. Then figure it out, because once that house sells, you won't have anywhere to go back to. I spent the next 3 days in a fog of grief and rage. Richard and I had bought that house before Ethan was born. We'd painted every room together, refinished the hardwood floors on our knees, planted roses along the fence. I'd brought both my babies home to that house. Richard had died in the upstairs bedroom, holding my hand, surrounded by everything we'd built together. And now Ethan and Sophia were selling it out from under me, erasing 40 years of my life so they could split the profits. The rage won. I began planning. Jenny became my accomplice, though she risked her job every time she helped me. She smuggled in her tablet during night shifts so I could search real estate records and read emails on Ethan's public-facing accounts. I learned that the house had multiple interested buyers, that Ethan had already spent some of the anticipated proceeds on a new car, that Sophia was planning a trip to Europe. They're not even pretending to look for a condo for you, Jenny said, showing me their text exchange. They're just going to leave you here and split the money. Not if I can help it, I said. The physical therapy had actually been working. My hip was stronger, my balance better. I could walk without assistance now, though I pretended otherwise to avoid suspicion. Jenny helped me map out the facility's schedule, the shift changes, the security protocols. The sale was scheduled to close in 2 weeks. The buyer, a young tech executive named David Chen, had already signed the preliminary paperwork. The final closing would take place at a law office downtown at 10 in the morning on a Thursday. I had to be there. Then Jenny worked the night shift before the closing. She brought me street clothes hidden in a laundry bag. At 3 in the morning, when the overnight staff was minimal, she helped me dress and led me through the service corridors to a side exit that led to the employee parking lot. I parked by the dumpsters, she whispered. Take my car. I'll report it stolen tomorrow morning. Say someone must have grabbed my keys. By the time they figure out you're gone, you'll already be at that law office. Jenny, you could lose your job. I'm 25 and I hate this place. I'll find another job. She pressed her car keys into my palm. You only get one life, Mrs. Carter. Don't let them steal yours. I hugged her, this young woman who owed me nothing but had given me everything. Then I walked out into the cold November night, climbed into her battered Honda, and drove toward Boston. The city was just waking up when I arrived. I'd forgotten how beautiful it was at dawn. The brick buildings glowing in the early light, the common just beginning to fill with morning joggers. I drove past my house first, unable to help myself. There was a sold sign on the lawn. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The law office of Morrison & Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a building on State Street. I arrived at 9:15, my hip aching from the drive, but my resolve absolute. The receptionist looked startled when I walked in. "May I help you? I'm Helen Carter. I believe there's a real estate closing scheduled for 10 o'clock concerning my property." Her eyes widened. "I'll inform Mr. Morrison." I took a seat in the waiting area, my heart pounding. At 9:45, Ethan and Sophia arrived with David Chen and his attorney. They were laughing about something, so confident, so pleased with themselves. Ethan saw me first. He went pale. "Mom, what are you doing here?" "Hello, Ethan. Sophia." I stood slowly, letting them see me upright and clear-eyed. "I've come to stop you from selling my house." Sophia recovered first, her face arranging itself into an expression of concern. "Mum, you shouldn't be here. You're supposed to be at Willow Creek. How did you even get here? You're not well enough to drive. I'm perfectly well, as you can see. Well enough to understand that you put me in that nursing home so you could sell my house without my knowledge or consent." "We're doing this for you," Ethan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The house is too much for you to manage alone. We're trying to protect you." "By selling my home without telling me? By putting me in a facility and taking away my phone so I couldn't stop you?" David Chen stepped forward, looking confused. "Excuse me, but are you saying you didn't authorize this sale? Because I was told you were mentally incompetent and your children had power of attorney." "I am not mentally incompetent, and they have no such power. I never signed any power of attorney documents." A door opened, and a silver-haired man, in an expensive suit, emerged. "I'm Gregory Morrison. Perhaps we should all step into my conference room." We filed in like combatants entering a boxing ring. Morrison sat at the head of the table, studying the documents in front of him with increasing concern. "Mrs. Carter, do you have identification?" I pulled out my driver's license, passport, and Medicare card. He examined each one carefully. "Mr. Carter, Ms. Carter, can you provide the power of attorney documents?" Ethan's jaw worked. "They're at my office. We can have them sent over." "They don't exist," I said flatly. "I never signed any such documents. I was perfectly competent when they convinced me to enter Willow Creek under false pretenses. They told me it was temporary rehabilitation. Instead, they imprisoned me in a nursing home and put my house on the market behind my back." "That's ridiculous," Sophia snapped. "She's elderly and confused. She fell and injured herself. We were trying to help her." "Then explain why you told Mr. Chen I was mentally incompetent. Explain why you restricted my phone access. Explain why you never once mentioned you were selling the house." Morrison held up a hand. "Mrs. Carter, you seem quite lucid to me." "Mr. Chen, I'm afraid we cannot proceed with this closing without proper documentation of Mrs. Carter's consent or legal incapacity. Without a valid power of attorney or guardianship order, her children have no authority to sell her property." "But we have a signed contract," Chen's attorney protested, "signed by people who apparently don't have the legal right to enter into it. This sale cannot proceed." I watched the realization dawn on my children's faces, all their careful planning, all their manipulation, crumbling in real time. "Mum, please," Ethan said. "We can work this out. We only wanted what's best for you." "No, you wanted my money. There's a difference." The office door opened again and Tom Winters walked in. Tom, my neighbour of 20 years, who'd helped Richard with our roof one summer and whose wife had brought me casseroles after the funeral. "Helen, I got your message. Sorry I'm late," he nodded to Morrison. "Tom Winters, Mrs. Carter's neighbour and friend. I'm an attorney, and I've been helping Mrs. Carter research her legal options." I hadn't sent Tom any message. We'd barely spoken in months. But he stood beside me, solid and real, and I understood that Jenny must have called him, must have made sure I had backup for this moment. "Mr. Winters," Morrison said, "good to see you. I think we're wrapping up here. This closing is cancelled. Mrs. Carter retains full ownership of her property." "I'd also like to discuss filing a complaint with Adult Protective Services," Tom said. "Mrs. Carter was placed in a locked facility under false pretenses." That's elder abuse. Now wait just a minute, Sophia said shrilly. You wait, I interrupted. You lied to me. You imprisoned me. You tried to steal everything your father and I built together. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I'd just disappear quietly so you could have your money? It's not about the money, Ethan said weakly. It's always been about the money for you. Both of you. I gave you everything. I paid for your schools, your weddings, your startup capital when your businesses faltered. I loved you unconditionally. And the moment I was vulnerable, you tried to eliminate me from my own life. Sophia's perfect makeup was streaking now, tears cutting through her foundation. We thought you'd be happy at Willow Creek. We thought you'd be taken care of. You thought you'd have $2.7 million to split. Don't insult me by pretending otherwise. Morrison cleared his throat. Mr. Chen, I apologize for this situation. Obviously, there will be no sale today. I'll have my office prepare the necessary documentation to cancel the contract. Chen nodded, looking relieved to escape the family drama. He and his attorney gathered their papers and left quickly. Morrison excused himself to make calls, leaving me alone with my children and Tom. What happens now? Ethan asked quietly. Now you leave, I said. Both of you. I'm going home to my house, not yours. And if you ever try something like this again, I'll do more than just show up at a closing. I'll press charges. Mom, you can't just... I can, and I am. Tom is going to help me make sure all my legal affairs are in order, my will, my healthcare directives, everything, so you'll never be in a position to make decisions about my life or my property again. Sophia was crying openly now. We're your children. You were my children. Now you're people who tried to rob me. There's a difference. I stood, my hip protesting but my spine straight. Tom offered his arm and I took it, grateful for the support. We walked out together, leaving Ethan and Sophia sitting at that conference table, looking lost and small. Tom drove me home in his car, arranging for Jenny's Honda to be returned to her. We didn't talk much. What was there to say? As we pulled up in front of my house, I felt something crack open in my chest, relief and grief mixing together. The sold sign was still on the lawn. Tom got out and yanked it from the ground, tossing it into his trunk. I'll take care of that, he said. He walked me to my door and waited while I found my spare key under the loose brick by the rose bush. The house smelled stale from being closed up, but it was mine. Every corner, every memory, mine. Helen, Tom said, we should talk about everything. Make sure you're protected legally, financially. Tomorrow, I said. Today I just want to be home. He nodded and left, and I was alone in my house for the first time in weeks. I walked through each room, touching the walls, the furniture, the photos of Richard on the mantel. My children had tried to erase all of this, to pack up 40 years and convert it to cash. They'd failed. I made myself a cup of tea in my kitchen, using my favourite mug, the chipped one Sophia had given me for Mother's Day when she was 8. I'd keep the mug, but not the illusion. My children had shown me who they really were. I'd grieve the relationship I'd thought we had, the family I'd imagined we'd remain. But I wouldn't let that grief weaken me again. My phone rang, startling me. Jenny had retrieved it from Willow Creek and Tom had brought it with him. I looked at the screen. Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. Then I blocked both their numbers. Tomorrow I'd work with Tom to secure my affairs. I'd make sure my house and assets went to charities, to causes Richard and I had cared about. I'd make certain my children never benefited from my death the way they'd tried to benefit from my vulnerability. But today I just sat in my kitchen drinking tea from a chipped mug, watching the afternoon light slant through my windows, grateful to be home. Jenny called that evening. Did it work? Are you okay? I'm home, I said. Because of you. Thank you doesn't seem like enough. You did the hard part. You showed up and fought for yourself. You gave me the chance to fight. What happened at Willow Creek? She laughed. Margaret is furious. They're investigating how you escaped. I stuck to my story about the stolen car, and since you're not actually a prisoner and you weren't under any legal guardianship, there's not much they can do. I'll probably get written up, but I don't care. If you need a reference for another job, I'll call you, promise. After we hung up, I realized I was smiling. I'd lost my children, or at least the relationship I'd hoped to have with them, but I'd found something else. Something maybe more valuable. Proof that I was stronger than I'd believed, that I could fight for myself, that being alone didn't mean being helpless. The house settled around me with its familiar creaks and sighs. Outside, the maple tree Richard had planted the year Ethan was born rustled in the November wind. The leaves were almost gone now, the branches bare against the darkening sky. But spring would come and the tree would bloom again. It always did. And I would be here to see it, in my house, on my terms, belonging to no one but myself. I was 58 years old, and I had just learned how to fight back. I had just learned that love given freely wasn't the same as trust earned. I had just learned that family was something you chose as much as something you were born into. And I had learned, most importantly, that I was still Helen Carter, widow of Richard, owner of this house, author of my own story. No one was going to write my ending but me.